The sound of panic was not something a person could usually hear, but inside the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council, the noise was deafening. It was not a loud noise, but a low, deep hum of fear that came from hundreds of different alien throats. The lights on the walls were flashing red. Big screens on the ceiling showed maps of the galaxy, and all of them were blinking with bright warning signs. In the center of the room, there was a large, round table made of glass. Around this table sat the leaders of the most powerful races in the universe. There was Hypreator Vex, who looked like a tall insect made of shiny black stone. Next to him was a creature made entirely of blue water, held inside a glass suit. Next to the water creature sat a robot made of shiny silver metal. They were all looking at the middle of the table. In the air above the table, a hologram was spinning. It showed the Apex Drive. The Apex Drive was the most important machine in the galaxy. It was a giant engine that sat in deep space. It kept the wormholes open. Wormholes were the roads spaceships used to travel fast. Without the Apex Drive, the galaxy would be cut into pieces. It would take 1,000 years to travel from one star to another. But now, the hologram showed the engine was glowing with a dangerous purple light. The energy levels are at 99%, the robot leader said. His voice sounded like metal grinding on metal. If the energy reaches 100%, the engine will explode. The explosion will destroy 3 star systems. There is nothing we can do, said the water creature sadly. We have tried to fix it with our best science. The math says it is impossible to stop it now. We must run, Hypreator Vex said, waving his forearms in the air. We must order the evacuation of all the central sectors. We must save who we can. The room became even louder. Leaders shouted at each other. They argued about who should be saved first. They cried about the loss of history and art. They accepted their fate. To them, the purple light on the screen was a death sentence. In the very back of the huge room, there were 2 chairs that were usually empty. Today, they were not empty. Sitting in one chair was a man named Mark. He was wearing simple blue pants and a gray jacket. He had short, dark hair and looked very tired. He was leaning back in his chair with his legs crossed. He was watching the chaos on the screen like it was a boring movie. Next to him sat a woman named Grace. She had long hair tied back in a ponytail. She was wearing glasses and looking at a small tablet computer in her hands. She did not look afraid either. To the aliens, humans were very strange. They were new to the galactic community. They were small, soft, and did not live very long. The other races thought humans were cute but not very smart. But Mark and Grace were the human representatives. They were here to watch and learn, or so the aliens thought. Mark looked at the hologram of the Apex Drive. He saw the purple light pulsing. He saw the numbers going up. He saw that the machine was shaking. "Hey, Grace," Mark said quietly. He did not shout over the noise. Grace looked up from her tablet. "What?" "Look at the frequency of the vibration," Mark pointed at the screen. "See that little jump every 3 seconds?" Grace looked. She typed something on her tablet. "Yeah. It's off by about 0.05%. It's a harmonic mismatch. It reminds me of the old generator we fixed at the cabin," Mark said. "The one that was shaking the whole house." Grace nodded. "Yeah. We hit it with a wrench and it stopped." Mark stood up. He stretched his arms above his head and yawned. The noise in the room did not stop. The aliens were too busy screaming about the end of the world. "Where are you going?" Grace asked, but she had a small smile on her face. "I'm going to fix it," Mark said. "Good luck," Grace said. She went back to her tablet. Mark walked down the long aisle toward the main table. He did not run. He walked slowly, with his hands in his pockets. As he got closer, the aliens began to notice him. They turned their heads. Their large eyes, some with many pupils, watched him. They were confused. Why was the human walking toward the center? Mark reached the front of the room. He walked right past High Praetor Vex. Vex stopped shouting and looked at Mark. "Human," Vex asked. "What are you doing? Go back to your seat. The end is near." Mark ignored him. He walked up to the hologram control panel. It was a very complex computer with thousands of buttons and strange symbols. Mark did not touch the buttons. He just looked at the hologram. He looked at the engine's core. It was spinning violently. "The dampeners are loose," Mark said to himself. "Excuse me," Vex said. He was annoyed now. "Human, this is a meeting for high leaders. This is not a place for a monkey. Go away." Mark turned around to face the council. The room became silent. Thousands of eyes were on him. Mark looked at Vex. He looked calm. He looked at the tall insect leader. "Move over," Mark said. "What?" Vex gasped. He could not believe the human's rudeness. "Move over," Mark repeated. He pointed to the main engineering controls. "You are doing it wrong. You are trying to calculate the explosion. You should be trying to balance the rotation. You are insane." Vex screamed. "This technology is 10,000 years old. Our brightest scientists have studied it for centuries. You are a human. You learned how to fly in space only yesterday. You cannot understand this." Mark sighed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal wrench. He held it up so everyone could see. The metal reflected the red flashing lights. "The engine is shaking because the stabilizers are out of sync," Mark said in a loud, clear voice. "It is simple physics. It is not impossible. It just needs a physical adjustment." High Praetor Vex took a step back. He looked at the wrench as if it was a weapon of mass destruction. "Do not touch the controls. You will kill us all." "I won't kill you," Mark said. He turned back to the screen. He typed a few commands. Surprisingly, the computer responded to his touch. The hologram zoomed in on the side of the engine. "All right," Mark said loudly. He looked at the shaking purple hologram. He cracked his knuckles. The sound echoed in the silent room. "All right, I'll handle it." The moment Mark said those words, a siren began to wail. It was not a siren from inside the room. It was the Galactic alert system. It was a system that was old and automatic. It was programmed by ancient Ace who had seen many species rise and fall. But they had never seen a species like humans. The AI in the council building heard the tone of Mark's voice. It analyzed the confidence. It analyzed the lack of fear. It matched the voice pattern with the human stubbornness protocol. Red lights began to flash everywhere. A robotic voice boomed through the entire station. "Warning. Alert level maximum. Alert level maximum. Human action imminent. All units take cover. Repeat, a human has taken responsibility. God help us all." In the room, the aliens panicked even more. "What is happening?" the water creature cried. "Why is the station going to red alert?" "The AI." The robot leader shouted. "The AI is triggering a galaxy-wide warning. It is broadcasting this to every ship, every planet, and every outpost. The alert says a human is intervening. That is worse than the explosion. Vex yelled. The last time a human intervened on a moon, they moved the moon 3 inches to the left. They flooded a continent just to see what would happen. Mark did not care about the sirens. He did not care about the flashing red lights. He focused on the hologram. "Grace," Mark said into his wrist communicator. "I need you down in the engine bay. Bring the toolkit. The big one." "Already on my way," Grace's voice came back. "I stopped by the cafeteria. I grabbed some coffee, too." "Good," Mark said. "Bring duct tape. We might need a lot of it." High Praetor Vex grabbed Mark's arm with his claw. "You cannot go to the engine bay. The radiation is lethal. The gravity is crushing. You will die before you reach the door." Mark looked at the claw on his arm. He looked into the eyes of the alien leader. "Vex," Mark said gently. "I have a mortgage to pay back on Earth. I have a cat waiting for me. I can't let this station blow up. I don't know how to die, and I don't plan on learning today." Mark pulled his arm away. He began to walk toward the exit door. The door slid open with a hiss. "Stop him!" Vex ordered the guards. The guards were robots, but they stepped back. Even the guards were programmed to fear a determined human. Mark walked out of the grand hall. He walked down the long, metal corridor. The sirens were screaming whoop whoop whoop. The lights were spinning red. People of all kinds of species were running away, carrying their belongings. They were screaming and crying. Mark walked against the crowd. He walked toward the danger. He checked his pockets. Wrench check. Screwdriver check. Duct tape. Grace was bringing it. The galaxy was watching. The news channels were showing Mark's face. The headlines read, "Human declares I'll handle it, Galaxy prepares for doom." The aliens knew 2 things about humans. They were violent, and they were lucky. But mostly, they were unpredictable. When a human said "I'll handle it," it usually meant they were going to do something crazy, dangerous, and effective. It also meant that everything around them was going to get messy. Mark reached the elevator to the engineering sector. He pressed the button. He waited. He whistled a little tune while he waited. The doors opened. He stepped inside. He pressed the button for the lowest level, the core. "All right," Mark said to himself as the elevator dropped fast. "Let's go fix this toy." The aliens above held their breath. They waited for the explosion. They waited for the death. But what they did not know was that for a human, a problem like this was just Tuesday. The elevator ride felt like it lasted forever, but the numbers on the screen changed very slowly. Mark leaned against the back wall and watched the floor number count down. He was not sweating. He was not shaking. He was mostly thinking about how much coffee he wanted to drink. When the elevator finally stopped, the doors slid open with a loud metallic hiss. A wave of hot air hit Mark's face. It smelled like burnt plastic and ozone. The hallway in front of him was dark, lit only by the red emergency lights spinning on the ceiling. The floor was vibrating under his boots. It was a heavy, thumping vibration, like a giant heart beating too fast. Mark walked out of the elevator and turned left. He headed toward the main engine room. He could hear the apex drive screaming now. It was a high-pitched sound that hurt his ears. The sound bounced off the metal walls. Ahead of him, a door was sliding open. Through the smoke, a woman walked out. She was carrying a heavy silver box in one hand and holding a large, white cup in the other hand. It was Grace. She was wearing her usual work clothes, jeans, heavy boots, and a t-shirt that had a picture of a rocket on it. She did not look like she was walking into a disaster zone. She looked like she was walking into her garage. "Took you long enough," Grace said. She handed Mark the coffee. It was hot, but the cup was thick. "The council was arguing," Mark said. He took a sip. It was strong and sweet. "Vex was crying, I think. Hard to tell with the bug eyes." "I saw the alert," Grace said. She walked past him toward the heavy blast doors of the engine room. "My phone beeped. It said human action detected, maximum alert. I didn't know the station had a setting for that." "It does now," Mark said. They reached the blast doors. Usually, these doors were sealed tight to protect the rest of the station from the engine's radiation. Today, they were bent. The metal was warped, buckling outward as if something inside was trying to break out. Mark typed a code into the keypad next to the door. It flashed red. "Access denied." "Of course," Mark sighed. He stepped back. He looked at the heavy metal bar that was supposed to lock the door in an emergency. It was already loose. He grabbed it with both hands. He pulled. The metal groaned. Sparks flew as he ripped the locking bar off the wall. He threw it onto the floor with a loud clang. Grace looked at him. "Show off." "Just opening the door," Mark said. He pushed the button again. The motors screamed, and the door slowly slid open. The noise inside was deafening. It was a roar, like a jet engine taking off right next to your ear. The room was huge, the size of a football stadium. In the center, suspended by magnetic fields, was the apex drive. It was a beautiful machine. It was a perfect sphere of silver and gold, spinning in the air. But right now, it was glowing purple. Lightning-like sparks jumped from its surface to the walls. The air around it was shimmering with heat. Grace walked right up to the edge of the safety rail. She opened her silver box. It was her toolkit. Inside were wrenches, hammers, laser cutters, and things that did not look like tools at all. "So, what is the plan?" Grace shouted over the roar of the engine. "Do we calculate the harmonic frequency?" Mark stood next to her. He looked at the spinning sphere. He shook his head. "No. If we try to calculate it, the computer will lag. The engine will explode before we get the answer. We have to do it manually." Manually, Grace looked at the sphere. The spinning metal was a blur. "It is spinning at 10,000 rotations per minute. If we touch it, our hands will turn to dust." "We won't touch the top," Mark said. He pointed to the bottom of the sphere. "Look at the stabilizers. See those 3 glowing rods at the base?" Grace looked. The rods were vibrating violently. They were supposed to be blue. Now they were flashing between red and purple. "They are out of sync," she yelled. "One is lagging behind the others." "Exactly," Mark said. "If we can get that lagging rod to move back into place, the vibration will stop. The engine will balance itself." "Easier said than done," Grace said. She reached into her box and pulled out a heavy pry bar. It was a piece of metal about 3 feet long. "How do we move it? The magnetic field is too strong for a robot." "Old school," Mark said. He took a sip of his coffee and put the cup down on a console. He walked to a large panel on the wall. He opened it. Inside was a maze of glowing wires and crystals. I am going to cut the power to the magnetic dampeners for exactly 5 seconds. 5 seconds. Grace looked at him. Mark, if the magnetic field goes down, the drive will fall. It will crush this room. It won't fall, Mark said. Not if it's spinning fast enough. It will stay up because of momentum. But for 5 seconds, the safety field will be gone. That is when you hit it? Hit what? Grace asked. The lagging rod, Mark said. You have to hit it forward. Hard. You have to use the pry bar. You have to knock it back into the socket. Grace stared at the rod. It was thick, glowing metal. I have to hit it with a bar. That is not engineering, Mark. That is barbarism. It's human engineering, Mark smiled. It works. Trust me. Grace took a deep breath. She tightened her grip on the pry bar. Okay. On your signal. Mark looked at the wires. He pulled out a pair of wire cutters. He looked at the console. The energy levels were at 99.5%. They had very little time. The holographic screens were flashing critical failure. Ready, Mark shouted. Ready. Grace yelled back. She stood in a batting stance, holding the pry bar like a baseball bat. She focused her eyes on the glowing rod at the bottom of the sphere. 3, Mark counted. The engine roared louder. Sparks flew across the room. A piece of the ceiling fell and crashed near Grace, but she did not move. 2, Mark yelled. Grace narrowed her eyes. She calculated the angle. She needed to hit the rod on the right side to push it left. She needed force, not speed. 1, Mark screamed. He squeezed the cutters. Snap. The lights in the room went out completely, except for the purple glow of the engine. The humming sound stopped for a split second. The sphere dropped 3 inches. The safety shield vanished. Grace swung the pry bar with all her strength. She swung it like she was trying to hit a home run out of the stadium. The metal connected with the glowing rod. Clang. The sound was incredible. It was like a church bell ringing inside a thunderstorm. The rod moved. It slid 3 inches to the left and locked into place with a loud click. Now! Mark screamed. He twisted the wires back together and taped them furiously with black electrical tape from his pocket. The power came back on. The magnetic field hummed to life. The sphere lifted back up. Grace stumbled back, dropping the pry bar. Her hands were numb from the vibration. Mark ran to her and pulled her away from the railing. The engine was still spinning. But the sound was changing. The high-pitched scream was getting lower. It was turning into a low purr. The purple lightning stopped. The glow faded from purple to a soft, steady blue. They watched from the floor. The vibration in the floor stopped. Did we do it? Grace asked, breathing hard. She wiped sweat from her forehead. Mark looked at the console. The warning lights were turning off. The energy level was dropping. 90%. 80%. It was stabilizing. We did it, Mark said. He picked up his coffee. It was still warm. Good hit. Grace laughed. She sat up and rubbed her shoulder. My hands are stinging. I think I broke a finger. Get Grace to the medical bay, Mark said into his communicator. We stabilized the core. A voice came back immediately. It was Hypreator Vex. What, you stabilized it? How? The sensors show the drive is operating at normal capacity. Did you use the quantum calibrator? Did you rewrite the code? Mark looked at the pry bar on the floor. He looked at the black tape on the wall. Something like that, Mark said. We used the percussive maintenance protocol. The what? Vex asked. Never mind, Mark said. We are coming back up. You can cancel the end of the world. Grace stood up and picked up her toolbox. Hey Mark. Yeah. Next time, you swing the bar. My shoulder hurts. Deal, Mark said. They walked out of the engine room, leaving the most powerful machine in the galaxy humming happily, held together by a piece of tape and a well-timed hit. The aliens above did not know it yet, but the galaxy was safe because of a wrench and a strong swing. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was quiet, but it was not a peaceful silence. It was the silence of 1,000 people holding their breath. Every eye was fixed on the large holographic screen in the center of the room. The red lights had stopped flashing, but the screen still showed the view from the security camera inside the engine room. The leaders of the galaxy were confused. Just moments ago, they had been saying their final prayers. They were waiting for the explosion that would turn them into stardust. But the explosion never happened. Instead, they saw the energy levels on the apex drive drop from a deadly purple to a safe, steady blue. High Praetor Vex was standing so close to the hologram that his nose was almost touching it. His forearms were crossed tightly over his chest. He kept tapping his foot on the floor. It is a trick, Vex whispered. It must be a trick. The sensors are malfunctioning. The humans did nothing. They are probably dead. The water creature, Counselor Thal, floated over to Vex. No, Praetor. The radiation levels are dropping. The gravity waves are stabilizing. Something happened down there. Something effective. They hit it, the robot leader, Unit 734, said. His voice was flat and monotone, but there was a hint of wonder in it. I watched the video feed in slow motion. The female human, Grace, struck the primary stabilizer rod with a heavy metal bar. Then the male human, Mark, bypassed the safety protocols with adhesive tape. Vex turned his insect head sharply toward the robot. They hit it. They struck the apex drive, the most delicate machine in the universe that is impossible. It is like trying to fix a watch with a hammer. It seems, Thal said softly, that for humans, the hammer is the correct tool. While the leaders argued, Mark and Grace were walking back down the long corridor toward the elevators. They were covered in grease and dust. Grace was shaking her left hand, trying to get the feeling back in her fingers. I really hope they have good medical supplies in the infirmary, Grace said. I think I bruised my bone. That rod was harder than I thought. Mark laughed. You looked like a professional baseball player, Grace. That was a home run. The galaxy is safe because of you. We are safe, Grace said. Now we just have to deal with the council. Vex looked like he was going to explode before we left. He is not going to be happy that two primitive monkeys fixed his toy. He should be happy, Mark said. We saved his life. He owes us a drink. They stepped into the elevator. Mark pressed the button for the council level. As the elevator rose, Mark tapped the communication device on his wrist. Computer, play music. Something classic. Rock and roll. A heavy guitar riff filled the small elevator. The drums thumped in time with the hum of the elevator motor. Grace smiled and tapped her foot against the wall. Better? Mark asked. Much, she said. It helps me think. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. Mark and Grace walked out into the main corridor that led to the Grand Hall. There were security guards everywhere, but they were not pointing their weapons. They were standing still, looking at the humans with wide eyes. The guards moved aside to let Mark and Grace pass. It was like the sea parting for a boat. Mark and Grace entered the grand hall. The conversation stopped instantly. All the heads turned toward them. The aliens looked at the humans' dirty clothes. They looked at the grease on Mark's face. They looked at the heavy tool bag Grace was carrying over her shoulder. Mark walked up the center aisle. He did not bow. He did not show submission. He just walked up to the main table where Vex was standing. He stopped and leaned against the table, crossing his arms. "You can cancel the red alert now," Mark said casually. "The drive is fine. Actually, it's running better than before. The rotation is perfect." Vex stared at him. His mandibles clicked together nervously. You hit it?" "Technically," Grace interrupted, stepping forward. "I hit it?" Mark held the wires together with tape. "Tape?" Vex asked, horrified. "You used sticky tape on the Apex drive." "It was high heat resistant tape," Grace explained. "It works great. You guys should try it sometime. You use too many lasers and not enough tape." The robot leader floated down from his seat to get a closer look. "Unit 734 is curious. The mathematical probability of your repair succeeding was 0.001%. How did you know where to strike?" Mark shrugged. "I don't know. It just felt right. The vibration was wrong, like when your car makes a noise. You don't need a computer to tell you the tire is flat. You just hear it." "Intuition," Thal whispered. The water creature seemed fascinated. "Humans do not rely solely on data. You rely on a feeling." "We rely on getting the job done," Mark said. "So, are we going to celebrate, or are we going to stand here talking about tape all day?" Vex suddenly regained his composure. He stood up straight and puffed out his chest. "You have acted recklessly, human Mark. And you, human Grace. You tampered with technology you do not understand. You put the entire station at risk. If your strike had missed, we would all be dead." "But it didn't miss," Mark said, smiling. "That is the important part." "It was luck," Vex insisted. "Barbaric luck." "Maybe," Grace said. She put her tool bag on the council table with a loud thud. A wrench rolled out. "But sometimes, luck is better than math. Where is the medical bay? My hand hurts." Vex waved one of his arms dismissively. "Guards, escort them to the medical facility. And ensure they are cleaned up. They are an embarrassment to the dignity of this council." Mark winked at Grace. "Come on, Grace. Let's go get fixed up. I think they like us." "I think they are scared of us," Grace whispered back. Mark and Grace turned and walked out of the hall, followed by two nervous guards. As soon as the doors closed, the room erupted into chaos again. But this time, it was not panic. It was debate. "We must study them," Unit 734 said. "We must analyze this percussive maintenance. If a simple strike can fix the drive, perhaps we have been overthinking our engine designs for 10,000 years. They are dangerous," Vex hissed. "They are unpredictable. They do not follow the rules. They are chaos in physical form. But they are effective," Thal argued. "Imagine if we had 1,000 humans in our engineering corps. We could fix the entire fleet in a week." "No," Vex said. "We cannot let them know how valuable they are. If they realize they can fix anything, they will demand more power. They will demand resources. Humans are greedy. We must keep them under control. We must make them believe they are just lucky helpers. Vex sat back down in his chair. He looked at the hologram of the apex drive. It was humming beautifully. It was the most stable it had been in centuries. And it was being held together by a piece of black tape that Vex could see on the camera feed. "Computer," Vex said. "Create a new file on the species known as humans." "File created," the computer replied. "Entry 1, Vex dictated. Humans are physically weak and short-lived. However, they possess a strange ability to solve problems through illogical means. They use violence to fix machines. They use noise to focus. When they say I will handle it, expect chaos. But expect results." Vex paused. He looked at the door where the humans had left. "Alert status," Vex continued. "Remain at yellow. Do not trust them alone with the nuclear weapons. But, if the engine breaks again, call the humans first." In the medical bay, Mark was sitting on a bed while a robot doctor scanned his hand. The robot doctor was very confused because Mark kept laughing. "What is so amusing?" Grace asked. She was sitting on the next bed, holding an ice pack on her shoulder. "Did you see Vex's face?" Mark chuckled. "He looked like he ate a sour lemon. He hates that we fixed it. He wanted it to be impossible so he could look smart." "Well," Grace said, "we are stuck here for a while. The station is safe, but the council is never going to let us forget this. We are going to be the galaxy's favorite weirdos now." "Let them talk," Mark said. He jumped off the bed. The robot beeped that his hand was fine. "As long as they keep the coffee coming, I'm happy to hit their engines whenever they want." Grace shook her head. "You are terrible, Mark. This is why we can't have nice things." "I saved the nice things, Grace," Mark said. "I saved the whole station. Now, I want a hamburger." "I bet they don't have hamburgers here. Just space paste." "Let's go find out," Grace said. "I'm starving." They walked out of the medical bay, leaving the confused robot doctor behind. They walked down the hallway, joking and laughing. They did not know that the entire galaxy was watching them on the news feeds. They did not know that their simple act of hitting a machine with a wrench was changing the way every alien civilization thought about engineering. But even if they knew, they probably wouldn't have cared. They were just humans. They had a job to do, and they did it. And now, it was time for lunch. Mark and Grace found the station's cafeteria without much trouble. It was a large, circular room with a glass roof that looked out into the stars. The tables were floating in the air, held up by magnetic fields. It was very fancy and very clean. However, the smell was strange. It smelled like burnt toast and wet seaweed. They walked up to the food counter. An alien with 3 eyes and 4 arms was standing there wearing a white apron. It looked at Mark and Grace and made a gurgling sound. "We are hungry," Mark said. He pointed at a metal tray. "What is that?" The server lifted the lid. Inside was a pile of dark, purple mush. It was bubbling slightly. "Protein paste," the server said in a robotic voice. "It contains all necessary nutrients. It is good for you." Mark made a face. "Is there anything else? Maybe something that used to walk or grow in the ground?" "We have nutrient brick," the server said. It lifted another lid. Underneath was a gray block that looked like a brick. "It is dry. It is healthy." Grace sighed. She leaned on the counter. Do you have any meat like beef or chicken, maybe some bread? The server blinked its 3 eyes. Meat, bread, we do not have these inefficient food sources. We consume nutrients for fuel only. Mark looked at Grace. This is going to be a problem. I can't eat purple mush. I need real food. If we are going to save the galaxy, we need energy. Grace looked around the cafeteria. She saw a door marked supply closet behind the counter. Hey, do you have a kitchen in the back, a place where you prepare the paste? Yes, the server said. Do you have flour, water, maybe some eggs or milk substitutes? Grace asked. We have raw protein components, the server said. And wheat grains. And hydro oils. Perfect, Grace said. She clapped her hands together. Mark, grab that apron. We are making lunch. Mark looked at the server. We are going to use your kitchen. Is that okay? The server looked confused. You wish to prepare food? This is not standard protocol. Food is for fuel. Food is for the soul, Mark said. He walked behind the counter. Come on, Grace. Let's show them what they are missing. For the next hour, the kitchen was busy. Mark and Grace worked together like a team. They found wheat grains and ground them into flour using a heavy metal pot. They mixed the flour with water and hydro oils to make a dough. They found some red berries that tasted like spicy tomatoes. They found some algae strips that had a texture like ham. They chopped and mixed and fried. The smell coming from the kitchen changed. The smell of burnt seaweed disappeared. It was replaced by the smell of baking bread and frying spices. Aliens in the cafeteria started to lift their heads. They sniffed the air. It was a smell they had never experienced before. It was rich and warm. It made their mouths water, even though they didn't know why. Mark put a large tray on the counter. On it were fresh, flatbreads topped with spicy algae strips, cheese-like sauce, and chopped vegetables. What is this? The server asked. It was staring at the tray. It is pizza, Grace said. Well, sort of. It is human food. Mark took a slice. It was hot and the cheese was stretching. He took a big bite. He chewed and smiled. It is not bad. A little chewy, but it works. An alien scientist walked up to the counter. He was tall and thin, with green skin. He had been watching them for a long time. I wish to sample the nutrient disc, the scientist said. It's not a disc, Mark said. It's pizza. Try it. Mark handed the alien a slice. The alien held it carefully. He looked at it, then he took a small bite. He chewed slowly. His eyes went wide. He took another bite. Then he took a huge bite. It is delicious, the alien whispered. It has texture. It has flavor. My taste sensors are overloading. Suddenly, the line at the counter grew long. Aliens from all over the station wanted to try the human food. Mark and Grace cooked as fast as they could. They made burger patties out of the protein paste and spices. They made fries out of sliced roots. They served food to hundreds of aliens. The cafeteria was noisy. It wasn't the noise of panic or arguing. It was the noise of people enjoying a meal. There was laughter. There was talking. The station had never felt this alive. After the rush died down, Mark and Grace sat on the floor behind the counter, eating their own pizza. They were tired but happy. We might have started a revolution, Grace said. I think they like our cooking more than our engineering. I don't care, Mark said. I'm just full. Suddenly, Mark's wrist communicator beeped loudly. It was a red alert signal. Mark sighed and wiped his mouth. So much for a break. He tapped the screen. This is Mark. We have a situation, High Praetor Vex's voice came through. It sounded shaky. You need to come to the observation deck. Immediately. It is the apex drive. It is, singing. Singing, Mark asked. He looked at Grace. Engines don't sing, Vex. They hum. You do not understand, Vex said. Just come here. And bring the female. Mark and Grace stood up. They washed their hands and ran out of the cafeteria. They took the elevator up to the observation deck. This was the top floor of the station, with a huge window that looked out into space. When the doors opened, the room was full of council members. They were all standing by the window, looking out. Their faces were pale with terror. Vex was standing in the front, shaking. Mark walked up to the window. What is going on? Look! Vex shouted. He pointed a trembling finger at the giant screen. Mark looked out the window. The apex drive was floating in the distance, in the middle of the docking bay. It was glowing. But it wasn't glowing purple anymore. It was glowing a soft, rhythmic gold. And it was making a sound. The sound was coming through the station's external speakers. It was a low, steady thrumming sound. But it wasn't a random noise. It had a beat. Thump thump. Thump thump. Thump thump. It is a heartbeat, Vex said. The machine is alive. You broke it so badly that it has gained consciousness. It is preparing to speak. Mark squinted at the screen. He listened to the rhythm. No, Mark said. That is not a heartbeat. Then what is it, Thal, the water creature, asked. It is communicating with us. Is it declaring war? Grace walked up to the window. She put her hand on the glass and closed her eyes. She listened for a moment. Then she opened her eyes and smiled. It is music, Grace said. Music, Vex yelled. The engine is playing music while we are in danger. It is not just any music, Grace said. It is the song Mark played in the elevator. Mark looked closer. The thrumming sound matched the beat of the rock song they had listened to earlier. We will rock you. The vibrations from their earlier music had been absorbed by the engine's stabilizers. Because they used the tape and the pry bar, the engine was now resonating with the frequency of the song. The drive is vibrating to the beat, Mark said. He started to laugh. It is dancing. This is unacceptable. Vex shouted. It is disturbing the peace of the station. It is shaking the crystals on my ceiling. You must stop it. Mark looked at Vex. It is not hurting anything, Vex. Look at the energy output. It is 120% efficient. The engine is singing because it is happy. Machines do not feel happiness. Vex roared. This one does, Mark said. He crossed his arms. Look, Vex. We told you we would handle it. The engine is fixed. It is working better than ever. If it wants to sing a little song, let it sing. The robot leader, Unit 734, rolled forward. The human is correct. The efficiency has never been higher. The singing is merely a byproduct of the harmonic resonance caused by their repair. The vibration is actually stabilizing the structure of the station. See, Grace said. It is good for the station. Vex looked at the drive. He looked at the gold glow. He looked at Mark, who was grinning. Vex felt powerless. The humans had done something impossible again. They had turned a catastrophic engine failure into a concert. Fine, Vex said, defeated. Let it sing. But if it changes to a different tune, one that I do not like, I am blaming you. Deal, Mark said. He turned to Grace. See, everything is under control. Now, can we go back to the cafeteria? I want another slice of pizza. Grace nodded. Let's go. But I think we should take the long way. I think Vex wants to be alone with his singing engine. Mark and Grace walked out of the observation deck, leaving the most powerful leaders in the galaxy staring at a giant, glowing, rock and roll engine. As they walked down the hall, Mark whistled along with the beat of the engine. The station hummed around them, matching his tune. The aliens they passed in the hallways didn't look at them with fear anymore. They nodded with respect. They smelled like pizza grease, and they sounded like success. You know, Grace said. This is actually pretty fun. Being the galactic heroes. Yeah, Mark said. But I miss my cat. I hope they have a pet store on this station. I need to buy a scratching post for the engine. The station was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. It was not the terrified silence from before, but a happy, tired silence. The Apex drive was humming its steady beat, vibrating through the floorboards of every room on the station. It had been 3 days since the incident. The golden glow from the engine could still be seen from the windows, pulsing softly like a giant, metal heart. Mark and Grace were in their temporary quarters. It was a small room with 2 beds, a table, and a window. Their bags were packed by the door. They were wearing their cleanest uniforms, ready to leave. Outside the window, the stars were shining. The wormhole gates were open, and ships were moving through them again. The galaxy was moving. I am going to miss the view, Grace said, looking out the window. She held a cup of coffee in her hand. But I am not going to miss the purple meat. Tell me about it, Mark said. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, tying his boots. I never thought I would be so happy to go back to eating instant noodles. I need real Earth food. A beep came from the door. It was the signal that someone was waiting for them. Mark stood up and opened the door. Standing in the hallway was High Praetor Vex. He was not wearing his formal robes today. He was wearing a simpler suit, but he still looked stiff and serious. Behind him stood 2 other council members. They were not carrying weapons. They were carrying gifts. Human Mark, Vex said. He nodded his head stiffly. Human Grace. It is time. Yeah, we are ready, Mark said. Our ship is fueled up. We are heading back to Earth. Vex stepped into the room. He looked uncomfortable. The council has voted. We have updated the status of your planet, Earth. You are no longer a protected Class D planet. You have been moved to Class A advisor status. That sounds fancy, Grace said. Does that mean we get better snacks? It means, Vex said, that when we have a problem, we will call you. We do not like it, but the numbers do not lie. Our efficiency has increased by 40% since you played with the engine. It was not playing, Mark said, smiling. It was maintenance. Vex ignored the comment. He reached into a bag he was carrying. He pulled out a small, heavy box made of glass. Inside was a medal. It was shaped like a gear with a star in the middle. This is the Star of Galactic Service. It is the highest award we can give to a non-council member. Vex handed it to Mark. For the kick. Mark took the box. He looked at the medal. Thanks, Vex. I will put it on my shelf next to my bowling trophy. Vex turned to Grace. He pulled out another box. This one contained a data chip. And for you, Grace. We have downloaded all our engine blueprints onto this chip. We want you to look at them. The Council believes that if you look at them, you might find other places to hit them. Grace laughed. I will do my best. But I charge extra now. Vex sighed. It was a sound of air escaping his insect lungs. I know. We have prepared the payment. He stepped aside, and the other council members came forward. They were carrying a large crate. They put it down on the floor with a heavy thud. What is this? Mark asked. It looks heavy. It is a token of our gratitude, Vex said. Open it. Mark pressed the button on the crate. The lid slid open. Inside, sitting on a bed of soft foam, were bottles. Hundreds of them. They were filled with a dark, amber liquid. They were sealed with wax. Is this what I think it is? Mark asked. He pulled one out and read the label. It was written in alien symbols, but the picture on the label was a bunch of grapes. It is the finest wine in the galaxy, Vex said. It is aged for 2,000 years. It comes from the vineyards of the Centauri stars. It is very valuable. Mark looked at Grace. 2,000-year-old wine. I think we can share a bottle tonight, Grace said. And there is more, Vex said. He waved his hand, and a small, furry creature walked out from behind his legs. It had 4 legs, big eyes, and long ears. It looked a bit like a rabbit, but it was bright green. This is a glurn, Vex said. It is a pet. It does not bark, it does not shed, and it eats trash. It is the perfect companion. Mark looked at the creature. The creature looked at Mark and sneezed. A small spark of electricity came out of its nose. It shoots lightning? Mark asked. Only when it is happy, Vex said. We thought you would like it. Mark picked up the green rabbit. It purred and vibrated in his arms. All right. I guess I have a pet now. You should go, Vex said. Your ship is waiting. Mark and Grace picked up their bags. Mark carried the heavy metal box. Grace carried the data chip. They walked out of the room and down the hallway toward the docking bay. Vex and the Glurn followed them. The hallways were crowded. Aliens from all over the station stopped to watch them go. No one was scared. No one was running away. They were clapping. It was a slow clap at first, but then it got louder. The aliens were cheering for the humans. They were cheering for the people who hit a machine with a wrench and cooked pizza for a starving station. Mark waved. Grace smiled and nodded. They felt like celebrities. They reached the docking bay. Their ship, the UESC Resolve, was waiting for them. It looked small compared to the huge alien ships, but it looked sturdy and strong. The ramp was down. Mark stopped at the bottom of the ramp. He put the Glurn down on the floor. It immediately ran up the ramp and disappeared inside. Well, Vex, Mark said. He turned to the alien leader. It has been an interesting week. You have taught us a lesson, Vex said. We thought that because we have big computers and fancy lasers, we were smart. We thought that because you are small and use simple tools, you were weak. We were wrong. We are not weak, Grace said. We just solve problems differently. Never say those words again, Vex said. please." "What words?" Mark asked, grinning. "You mean I'll handle it?" Vex flinched. The alarms in the station did not go off, but Vex looked nervous just hearing it. "Yes. Those words. They cause too much stress." "No promises," Mark said. He held out his hand. Vex looked at the hand. He hesitated, then he reached out and shook it. His hand was dry and hard, like a shell. "Goodbye, human Mark. Goodbye, human Grace. Try not to blow up any stars on your way home." "We will do our best," Grace said. Mark and Grace walked up the ramp. They paused at the top and turned around one last time. The station was huge behind them. The lights were blinking, and the gentle hum of the engine vibrated through the metal floor. It felt alive. They waved one last time. Then they disappeared inside the ship. The ramp closed. The engines of the UESC Resolve roared to life. Blue fire shot out of the back. The ship lifted off the floor. It moved slowly out of the docking bay doors and into the black space. Inside the cockpit, Mark sat in the pilot's chair. He buckled his seat belt. "Set a course for Earth." "Maximum speed." "Course set," Grace said from the co-pilot seat. "ETA, 3 days." Mark looked out the window as the station got smaller and smaller. He could see the giant golden glow of the apex drive in the distance. It was pulsing to a rhythm. "You know," Mark said. "I think they are going to be okay." "They have the blueprints," Grace said. "And they have the wine. They will be fine." Mark smiled and pushed the throttle forward. The ship jumped forward, leaving the station behind. In the back of the ship, the green glurn barked happily, and a spark of lightning lit up the cargo hold. Back on the station, High Praetor Vex walked back to the Grand Hall. He sat down in his chair. He looked at the hologram of the galaxy. Everything was green. Everything was safe. "Computer," Vex said. "Yes, Praetor." "Update the Earth file." "Updating." "Add a note," Vex said. "If the apex drive ever breaks again, or if we run out of wine, or if we just need someone to cook a decent meal, call the humans. But keep the fire extinguishers ready." The screen blinked. Note added. Vex leaned back and closed his eyes. He could still hear the faint beat of the engine. Thump thump. Thump thump. It was annoying, but it was safe. And for the first time in a long time, the galaxy was not afraid of tomorrow. In the distance, a small blue ship turned into a streak of light and disappeared into the wormhole, heading home.